Welcome to the bridge. I'm your host, Chris Morgan. Today we have a huge guest that's such an inspiration of mine. He's often referred to as the Godfather of modern productivity. Mr. David Allen, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Chris, thanks for the invitation. Sure, glad to be here.
Oh man, it's such an honor to have you. Yeah, I want to kind of preface our conversation because I know that you've had the David Allen Company for many years, and you've really opened the door to modern productivity for so many people, not just myself. And I kind of wanted to get your take on see, the motivations that really led you to entering into that world and kind of being a pioneer into that world of productivity. So I'll let you take it from there.
I needed a job, Chris.
You needed a job. Perfect.
Yeah, I was, American intellectual history, history of thought, history of culture, graduate school, Berkeley, 1968. And, heady time to be in Berkeley, but, I basically said, let me go, instead of studying people who were enlightened, let me go find my own. So I just, for some reason, I just decided to drop out and go do my own self-exploration. Got a black belt in karate, studied meditation, spiritual practices, and whatever to sort of do the inner journey. But, they don't pay people to do that, so I needed a job. So I wound up, there were friends of mine in my network that had their own businesses, small entrepreneurs, startups or whatever, and I said, okay, let me see if I can go help them. So I just wound up sort of project by project. I just walk in and say, hey, how can I help? And can you give me a little bit of a job to help you do this? And they went, sure, hey, that'd be great. And then I'd look around and go, how much easier could we do this? Because I'm Mr. Lazy, because I'm the laziest guy you ever met. That's how I came up with GTD and this whole process was without a little effort, can I make sure that, cool stuff gets done? So I look around and I say, hey, how much easier can we get? Can we get out of here a little earlier today? If I could improve the process. Now they call that process improvement. That's it, but back then I was just, how do we get out of here early? And I'd help
so
them.
much
I would improve their process and then fix it and then get bored and then go find another job. So I then discovered they pay people to do that. They call them something consultant. Wow. Let me see if I can, actually make a living out of just showing up and doing project by project with people to see if I could help do what they were doing. And haven't stopped since. That was 1980, 1982, 83, a while ago. And so that's how it kind of all got started. But it turned out that because I had my experience in meditation and martial arts and whatever, clear head was a very practical place to be. And I really had sort of uncovered that for myself. And then discovered as my life got busier and, my consulting business sort of picked up. I was like, wow, how do I stay clear myself with this busy life? And discovered piece by piece. I didn't wake up one morning with this whole thing. I just did little bits and pieces here and there. And I started to add them to what I was doing, and they all worked to help me be more clear, more focused, more in control, more space to think about cool stuff. And then well, let me see if that works for my consulting clients or we didn't call it coaching back then, but that's really what it was. And it turned out I shared it with them. They started to use these techniques and produce the same results for them. It's like, wow, well, that's cool. So that kind of became a core of my consulting business back in the early 1980s. And then some guy in the big corporate world showed up and said, gee, David, we need that result in our whole culture. Can you design some sort of a similar, what you've come up with, so we can reach maybe a lot of people with the model and instead of one-on-one? So I said, okay, I'll try.
There's a couple things I pulled out from there that is so interesting to me. One of the things sounds very familiar is everybody who knows me knows I'm a huge Apple fan, followed Steve Jobs for quite a bit. And that time frame of what you had mentioned about discovering yourself from an inner perspective. And, I've read Walter Isaacson's book on Steve Jobs, and around maybe a couple of years later from there, around early 70s, he had done the same thing where he took that perspective of learning from an inner journey to be able to serve outwardly in a better capacity. So when you were saying that, it sounded very familiar to me that around that time frame, there was a lot of just understanding oneself to be able to better serve in whatever you decide that you're going to do from that point forward. Yeah. So it's
maybe
interesting.
I wouldn't be. I'd be a little more selfish. I'm just like, how do I manage myself?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that big a game in terms of how do I manage a whole lot of other people, or how do I serve them. It's like, how do I keep a job, and how do I do something that still works for me, that doesn't, denigrate my own values and my own, uh, things I consider important and useful. And,
Yeah.
how can I find a way to make a living, with
That's
something
what we all do,
that's cool.
right? We all
Yeah.
do that is, I started my company back in 2014 for the same reason. I had thought I was a young kid. I thought, oh, wow, I made it. I got a job on Wall Street. And then it all came crumbling down. I had 2 kids, a wife, and I went, what am I going to do? And I had opened up my practice. I started by building websites because it was, I'm just one of those nerds. And then it changed and it iterated over time. Like you said, it wasn't you wake up one morning and you have it all put together. The feedback loops and the iterations upon itself. And now, I'm just entering 10 years now. And it's been quite a journey. And I don't notice that everybody I speak to on the show that has started something of their own, it seems very similar. It's out of necessity to begin with, for survival. And it just starts to compound on itself. Not to the levels of yours, at this point, but it's just amazing when you see a lot of the similarities. And one of the barriers that I've noticed for a lot of early entrepreneurs that have taken these is, that fear mentality of, what if people don't like it? What if people, don't resonate well with it? Did you have any of that when you first started?
No,
No, not at all.
no. I was just doing my own thing. And then just people kept coming to me, say, hey, can we do more of this? Or how can we do this in a bigger game, or whatever?
God,
And,
I love
I
that.
just got invited to design my stuff for some sort of a corporate training program, if I could do that. And I did, and it was one of the most successful trainings they'd ever done. Could have fooled me. Come on, as an American intellectual history major in Berkeley in 1960, if you'd told me I was going to be in the corporate training world, I go, come on, what are you smoking? Are you kidding? But it turned out that was the ripest audience for actually what I had personally uncovered. So I just, put one foot in front of the other, followed my nose, picked up the phone. Said, okay, you want me next? Okay, let's see what I can do.
Oh,
And that was, that produced 20 years in my career where I just wound up training, thousands of people in the corporate training world. And then somebody said, David, you should write the book. Well, how do you write a book? So,
that's incredible. I started,
yeah,
oh, yeah, he just launched another book. And it's
yeah,
amazing how many generations and how many different leaders have read through the words of what you created, and it's constantly still passing down. And even the younger leaders in their early 20s that are reading your book and reading your words and taking your advice is changing the game for them too. So I got to ask you, like, how does that, do you even think about that, about how there's a legacy created?
yeah. From time to time, I get feedback almost daily from people that go, wow, it changed my life, or how cool is that? And it's like, wow, how cool is that? You could have fooled me, and the fact that we were able to come up with something that was so universal that it was timeless in terms of the principles. And
Yeah.
so, you know, when I wrote the book, I had, Chris, I had sort of high aspiration and no expectation. I thought, I just need to get this out of my head, create the manual of what I've learned. But, I had, you know, but I had no formal traditional education in time management, psychology, or business. This was all street smarts that I came up with for myself, turned out worked for other people, and then found a way potentially to put that into kind of an educational model. And I said, I don't even know if I can put myself in a book. And
Wow.
so I just wrote the book to get it out of my head and, what would happen. And the first weekend it was out, I think some woman had picked it up at Barnes and Noble, in 2001, the first edition of Getting Things Done. And she said, David, wow, I implemented this and changed my life. I went, oh my God, I guess I could put myself maybe in a book or put this stuff in a book and people could, and virtually people could sort of get it. So you could have fooled me. I'm not particularly entrepreneurial or aspirational in that way. I just I'm more of a researcher and an educator, I guess, just trying to figure this stuff out. And then how do I put this in a way that people seem to get value out of it? And I happened to hit a nerve, I guess, out there for folks, and it worked.
That's
Still does.
beautiful. That's beautiful. It's so poetic because you've seen, I'm sure you've seen the resurgence of, productivity now, especially since 2020. There's so many people that have taken on that model, and who knows? I mean, it could have been you that really pioneered it, but people that have said, okay, well, this is what I've learned over the years. Let me put it all together, organize it. And now you look at the digital course um, business now, I think it's 100 and some odd $billion. And it's exactly what you just said is you have all this learning and this knowledge and it can be useful in some capacity. You don't know where, but you start pushing it out. And a lot of these people have created incredible lives just by doing that very same thing. So you look at from 2001 up until 2020, and now, it's expected to be a $280 billion industry in 24 up to 2030, I believe. And it's repetitive in that it just iterates upon itself because it's digital, right? People have digital courses, but it's such the same thing from 2001 on to now. And it's got to be incredible to know that there's a part of that has transitioned into new generations that are people that are taking that same type of model and doing it on themselves.
No, I feel totally blessed by the powers that be that I somehow uncovered, something that was so universal that doesn't change and that it does nothing but improve people's lives and conditions. So, like, wow, how cool is that?
It's incredible. Now, as a sidebar, I got to ask you, what style? You mentioned that you're a black belt.
I studied karate. A friend of mine, taught me karate, and we wound up doing sort of an American compilation of styles.
Okay.
Ultimately, probably closest to Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, which was just such an efficient form of the martial arts. So,
I was a kid when I started. I started in the style of Ishin-Ryu, Okinawan-based karate, and I loved it. It was just a way for a young kid to kind of get some structure.
Fabulous training about focus and about discipline. And
have you read his book, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do?
No.
Oh, it's a great book. There's a lot of self-policing and understanding how movements of the body and control within the body and to make it much more beneficial.
I stole his sensei's, idea of mind like water. Hey, Bruce, you need to be like water. You be, flexible and powerful or calm or whatever, and not over or under react. So, So
what is
great stuff.
What is the martial arts? You studied that. I know for myself, there's a lot of things I've taken from that and I've learned in business that I apply. Have you done the same? I mean, has that had an impact on your business as well?
Not really.
No?
Not that I know of, other than just sort of what I learned in going through that experience, just about, hey, being cool and being clear
Yeah.
and being able to get your head clear so you can focus on whatever you want to focus on appropriately.
That was
Uh,
a perfect segue. That was a perfect segue because I wanted to ask you about your focus. Yeah, having your consultancy and writing books and everything. Is there anything that you can offer some of the listeners on how to garner focus in driving you towards getting the things done that you really need to get done to move the needle?
yeah, stop using your head as your office. Your head is a crappy office. Your head did not evolve to remember, remind, prioritize, and manage relationships between more than four things. That's cognitive science now.
Hmm.
So people who most people are still trying to use their head to deal with all the stuff they're trying to deal with in life, but it just doesn't work that well. So I learned 40 years ago, your head's for having ideas, not for holding them. Just different, given some of the things that I learned from some mentors of mine and just pieces of this that I discovered. Get it out of your head. You know, write it down. Capture all the stuff that has your attention, and then make decisions about what they mean to you, and then park the results somewhere that you trust, some external brain. So anybody who keeps a calendar is already doing that.
Yeah. I noticed that
So
myself as I get older. I can't remember it all. I've got my kids' schedules, my family schedules, and I don't know if it's something that's cognitive as I'm getting older, or maybe there's just too much, but I can't remember it all. And even on my phone, I wanted to distill it down to its most basic form. So on the home screen of my phone, I just keep notes, calendar, and reminders, and that's it. Just so that way I don't get all mucked up and off track.
yeah,
And it seems to help. My kids won't adopt it, but it helps me.
yeah. Well, from the time they're about 12 till about they're 22, they could care less.
Yeah, that's where we're at. I got an older son at 15 and a younger one that's 10, and we try to keep them off social media. We lock everything down as best as we can. And my oldest son, thank God, he's got straight A's going into high school. He's very athletic. My youngest son's a golfer, so he's doing very well. But it's just the constant battle of all of the external that comes into their world now from
Yeah,
social medias and things
yeah.
like that, and trying to
Give it up, Chris.
kind of, my wife and I play
We'll figure it
goalie
out.
a lot of times, and we block a lot of what they get. But
You know,
we got to let it happen too. There's some
or you could just
type of
let them
freedom that you
know,
have to give
hey,
them because
hey
it's their
guys,
world.
if it gets overwhelming, there are some ways you can manage that if you want, and I'll show you.
Yeah,
But obviously, you have to model that. They pick it up
lead by example.
whenever they need to. But yeah, no, it's all a adrenaline rush for them. It's
Hmm.
like, who cares?
Yeah, that
Uh,
dopamine hit. Now, we were talking right before we came on and talked about your new book, Team, right? Or
mm.
GTD Teams. That is very, very timely, obviously. Probably why you wrote it, right? Can you kind of talk to us about that?
Well, for 40 years, people would get what I taught them or shared with them or whatever personally and improve their own personal productivity. And then they go, oh my God, if people around me got this, it would make life and work so much easier. But I never really had the bandwidth or an opportunity to try to figure out how to create that model, for people. And then 4 years ago, my partner in doing the GTD work in the UK, he'd been working with a lot of senior teams who'd been trained in the getting things done model and saw how much that affected their culture around them. And he said, David, come on, let's not, is there some way we can not let this just happen ad hoc when people kind of get this and maybe share it around them? Is there some way we can kind of formalize this or objectify it? So we spent 4 years saying, okay, let's see if we can distill out of the air what are these best practices that if you're working with other people, and it turns out they're all the same principles that work for getting things done. It's all the same things about how do I capture, clarify, organize, reflect on all the stuff in the situation. How do I manage my priorities with all the purpose and vision and and all those other things that I sort of uncovered and distilled. I didn't make them up. I just sort of recognized what actually we do to get control and to get focus. And so that's it. So what we did was to then create now a manual about how you would work with other people if you want to get things done with other people. And everybody has to use other people to get things done now.
Yeah.
You do. Even if you're the lone hermit drawing your own pictures in the woods. But if you want to express them, you want to get them out somewhere, want somebody to produce them, you're going to have to work with other people. So a team is as simple as you and a taxi driver. Where are we going? How do we get there? What are our purpose and principles? You don't have to be that conscious about a whole lot of stuff that you're doing, but there's all those principles are still there. So when people want to get more stuff done in a more complex way and perhaps in a bigger way, there are some best practices. You don't have to transform people. You don't have to transform the culture. You don't have to transform a company to take advantage of these best practices. And most teams, especially the corporate business world, have some big improvement opportunities in terms of how well they run meetings, what are their standards about how they play, and all that. So we just basically cataloged, I think, all of those best practices, the functions and the dysfunctions. And I think anybody who gets the book would probably recognize, some improvement opportunities in that regard.
That's the part I'm most excited about reading that book is, I spent a lot of time in the corporate world for large enterprise companies. And when, as soon as you said meetings, that just jumped out at me because there's so many times that you're in meetings and you're not even sure exactly what the outcome or what the takeaways from that meeting is and what's the action steps to take upon that. And I think that communication within those meetings sometimes gets lost in translation. So I'm really interested to see the perspective on some of those meeting takeaways that you can really start moving the needle there.
For all the years that I've coached hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of senior executives, the two biggest issues that they have about their own productivity are meetings and email. For the same reason you said about meetings, email is the same thing. Why am I getting this email? What do I do with this? Oh my God. And they let them pile up to 20,000, 70,000. I ran across somebody with 70,000 emails in their in basket. I go, oh my God, why?
I see that a lot as a career coach all the time. I see that with the little red badge of 20,000, 30,000, 40,000. And it's just, I start getting heart palpitations. And for me, I ask myself two simple questions every time I get an email. What is it? What do I need to do? And that's it.
Yeah.
If it can take me 2 seconds, that's it. It's not that deep of an issue. And the delegating too, I think, is another issue within corporate teams. Is there are some managers that just don't want to. They do it from a good place. I don't think they're just they don't want to delegate too much on their team because they don't want to overload it. However, it is part of the responsibility of maybe that resource within their team. But there's that pullback effect where they say, oh, I don't want to overload Tommy because there's too much on his plate. And now that specific task starts getting off the rails a little bit. And the old project management waterfall method, that'll bottleneck a lot of different things, when you're waiting that way. That's why I love the agile methodology of just constantly moving and not being so dependent on different pieces while they're doing that work. Consequently, another piece of that project can still move. And I love that methodology.
Sure. Well, one of the things we put in the book is you should only do what only you can do.
Yeah. Simple and perfect.
But that's tough to do for people that they got promoted to where they are because they did something very well. They have a hard time giving that up because they don't trust other people to do it as well as they could do it. And, it's a whole new game, for people to learn how to do that and to move up to that next step of the ladder.
And that's one of the problems too, right? You get these legacy programs in. I mean, someone had come in, they created a program within the corporation, and that program has been there for 10, 15 years. And those legacy programs, they don't want to let those go. Those have been the benchmarks of things. And they, we forget even in the corporate world, things have to iterate and they have to evolve through new people coming in or new projects coming in or new resources. But they're so tied to other systems. And that's the other thing. Overlap drives me crazy. And they won't let them go. And I think that's one of the bottlenecks that also stops projects from moving along in the corporate world.
For sure. Yeah, you're right.
In that teams, I mean, within teams, I'm assuming that it's very general, right? The advice and the framework is very general. So it can work in HR teams, it can work in finance teams. Doesn't really matter what capacity, right? It'll still help.
No. You and your taxi driver still need to know where we're going. Don't drive too fast. Make sure I pay you appropriately. Come on. So you and anybody else, if you have a life partner or even a roommate, you're a team.
That's an excellent point.
Who's trash? Who's dog food? Who's whatever? I'm trash man in my life, and
me too.
Catherine will she'll pick up the cat. She'll pick up the slack if I'm out of town or whatever. But she's early morning dog pee and poop. I'm late night dog pee and poop, and we pick up the slack if we need to. But these help when that's clear. Yeah,
and that makes such sense too, because even as simplistic as that, the dog pee and the dog poop, it still resonates with almost everything that you do. I mean, it could be setting the table for my children at dinner. They set the table and they alternate Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and the whole thing. And that, what's the end game is making sure that we can, we're ready to eat every night for dinner. And in coaching, I always talk to people around their careers and what are they looking at. And the first question that I ask is, what's the end game? So we can devise a plan that we can reverse engineer to get there, right? Because if you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you're going. You can't plan towards nothingness. You have to have some type of end game. And I'm assuming that the corporations that you had consulted and everything, is that one of the questions that you incorporate?
Oh, sure. What are you trying to do? I mean, look, the zeros and ones of productivity are what are we trying to produce and how do we allocate or reallocate resources to make it happen? Mm-hmm. So the outcome and action are the core elements. You can't get rid of that.
Yeah. And that's got to be there.
We've had people train their kids at 3 years old and 4 years old. What would you like Christmas to be like? Great. What do you think we need to do to get there? You don't have to be that old to get that, but we don't seem to be born doing that or thinking that way. It seems to be a cognitive muscle you need to sort of train. You're not born knowing how to cook spaghetti or do the tango or speak Dutch, right? These are things you have to learn. And so the process of how do I think about stuff that maybe has my attention or that I want to accomplish has to have some sort of a focused thought process.
And where do you think people should start? I mean, if you had to drop one nugget for any listener, whether they're early stage or late stage in their career, where would people start to kind of get things? I knew that was coming. That's true. Write it down. Capture it.
Yeah. You need to get what's on your mind off your mind, but you don't get it off your mind just by writing it down, but that's the first step. You got to capture what that is, and then you have to then go through a thought process. What does that mean? What am I going to do about it? Et cetera. But that's the first step. It's just stop using your head as your office. It's such a crappy office. I said that before.
Yeah. And just to relate it quickly to, how career coaching is very, very similar. A lot of people that are looking for work right now with the massive layoffs and everything, I tell them, calm down. Don't worry. This is very similar. We've seen this before. Companies go through layoffs. It's a necessary model, but people get very worried. And, one of the things I ask them, what company do you want to work for? Or what's your target company? And I ask them to do exactly that. Write down 50 companies that you feel that you would like to work for. And I get the same thing all the time. 50 companies. I don't know where to find 50 companies. I say, take a pen and paper, walk around your house and look at the things that you bought. Pretty good, safe bet that if you invited a company's product into your home, you might enjoy working with them because you trust and know them to invite them into your home. And when I say that, to write that down, almost every time, maybe 80% of the time, people come back with 60, 70, 80. So where that original number of 50, seems so daunting. And then they walk around their house and they do that. And they go, oh, I got this from Barnes & Noble or something. Maybe I could work for that company.
Sure. Oh, wow. I'd love to work for Dyson. Oh, my God.
Yeah. It's such a simple concept. And I love how you put that, just pull the pen and paper out. It all starts there and let it evolve. And, what we've seen now in the simplicity of, like I said, I like Apple. I've got so many screens there, but my notes section is constantly evolving. And the second I get an idea, I jot it down. I might not look at it for another 4 or 5 days, but when I do go back to it, it'll start to evolve into something that I'm working towards, if that makes sense.
Oh, sure. And, some of my most creative time is at night when my dogs are asleep, my wife's asleep. I have a great glass of wine or two, sitting in my easy chair in the living room. The lights are out. The phone's off, computer's off, or whatever. So that reflective time is sometimes when I have that, I might want to do that. Now, 80% of the time, it's just crap. I go, God, too much wine, David. What a crazy idea. But 20% of the time, it's like, yeah, we might actually want to take a trip to Italy and do that. And, those are the kinds of things that you need to give yourself permission to have those kinds of creative, non-sequential thoughts that just show up out there. But you have to give yourself space to do that. You don't need a lot, but you do need some room to be able to have those kind of ideas and capture them and then decide, and then make use of those. So in terms of people's career, I want to change my jobs. I want to leave this job. What else might want to do? So I think your suggestion is a great one. Yeah. What are the companies you buy stuff from that you might want to work for?
Yeah.
Or enjoy? And what turns you on? That's a really good question.
That's a powerful question.
When are you on? When are you? When you're doing what? Taking a check to the bank, doing an Excel spreadsheet, building a model of something in the garage for your kids. I don't know.
Can I return that question to you? When are you turned on? I mean, what is it for you?
Right now, being asked about what I came up with and then being able to share that with people that might get some value out of it. So, creating just having a platform to be able to then talk about stuff and then see what shows up, when I'm asked and when people sort of poke at me about what have I come up with and what value might I be able to create for them. So, and that could show up in a lot of ways. I do keynote speaking, write another book, whatever. But you could have fooled me. It wasn't a big strategic plan. That's just kind of what showed up out there. As I come live my life and try to do it as good as I could.
That's excellent. But for me, it's just talking to people. As a recruiter and a career coach, I can't sit in front of a computer as much as I love tech. I can't sit in front of a computer all day. Sometimes I just have to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, and it rejuvenates me. I love the connection and not knowing where the conversation is going to go. Some of the best conversations are the ones you don't know where they're going to go. And for me, that's the fire under, that ignites me. It's just talking to people and the gift of gab, I guess, right?
Yeah, good for you, Chris. Yeah.
Now, the one final question I want to ask you, David, is, you brought it up earlier. You said about sitting in your easy chair, and I'm imagining this because I've done the same thing. sitting in your easy chair and writing things down. For you, are you a journaling type of guy?
I have been from time to time over the
From time to time.
last 30 or 40 years. There have been times where I did a lot of journaling, times when I just haven't bothered. But it's a great way to sort of clear your head and your unconscious, I think. It's just to, just blab out there what's on your mind. Free flowing writing.
Yeah.
Just whatever's on your mind, get it out of your head, write it down, whatever. So I've done it infrequently, but from time to time, and it's been very useful when I did it. Yeah, it's
I'm
nice to
seeing a
have
lot of popularity.
I've got, it's nice to have a really good fountain pen and a really good journal, notebook that you like writing in, and then just to use your fountain pen and just to use the notebook, even if you got absolutely nothing on your mind, go ahead, just pick it up and then see what starts to happen. And it's been brilliant stuff from time to time for me, for sure.
I'm seeing a lot of popularity coming out of it now. I mean, people make digital journals that you can still write in if you use kind of like an Apple Pencil type of thing, and it's interesting to see kind of a resurgence of that. I used to carry around, people date me very much. Filofax. Remember the Filofax?
I do.
I used to love that thing. I used to write down, but very similar to you. There's times where I won't for quite a while, and then something will just spark, and I'll sit down and I'll just free write or free type in my case. And there's so many things that will reignite a purpose or a journey that just comes out of that. To your point, it's just an amazing tool to help your mind and help your excitement develop.
Well, I think, Chris, you need to feel the freedom to do that when you need to do it. What you don't want is to be constricted that I don't want to do that kind of thing, or I don't know how to do that, or whatever. You need to be able to just have all these tools around you. Let me just type. For many years, I just typed on my computer my journal. It worked. It was great. I still have somewhere, I don't know where I've stored it, somewhere in my digital storage. I still have years of journal writing that I did simply because, in 1983, I bought an IBM XT computer and a Radio Shack Model 100, little thing, and the software that connected them. And it's like, oh my God, I've got this little thing. No matter where I was at the time I was starting to travel a whole lot, but I had this little thing in my hand, and there was probably I don't think there's any better keyboard than the Radio Shack Model 100.
Wow.
It was so easy to use and so familiar and so comfortable. So I used that a lot. So I think what you need is no restriction in terms of your expression. You don't want to hold yourself back because I don't know how to do that, or I don't have the tool to do that, or whatever. I think you need to, as long as you have all those options, doesn't matter how much you use them or not. You just don't want to be constricted.
That's perfectly said, because that's what you do. It's just, it doesn't matter. Look, you're not going to break technology. People get worried about the systems and all that. If you break it, you can hit a back button and it'll go back. So
there's always, Control A, Control X.
Exactly. Just write or type, or and just see what comes out of it. I used to have remember the little Mead notebooks, the flip over notebooks, and I used to carry around one of those in my back pocket. Just real tiny notebooks that were no bigger than your phone.
Yeah.
And a pen, just basic pen. I used to carry that around, and I would have just an idea, and I would jot it down. I remember when I first met my wife, 1998, she had seen me pull this. There you go. And she would laugh at me.
I've had that for 35 years. I still do.
Those are great. There's so much gold in there. And I have hundreds of them that my wife and I now go back and we pull them out. And I say, remember all those days I used to have that pen? And we'll go through them and laugh. And some of them, we've now rekindled some of those ideas that, I said, oh, I would love a beautiful house that has this. now we've seen some of those things. Now we have a nice home and we're updating those projects and we're doing those projects. It's amazing years later how they resurface and change the game for you. I love that. I love that so much. Well, David, thank you so much. I don't want to take too much of your time, but you know, I definitely want to put a link to the new book that you have out because you know, I'm going to buy it myself, and I think everybody should, you know, get a copy of it. Is there any other things that you're working on that where people can find you to get in touch?
No, Chris, I'm 78. How many other things do you think I could work on right now?
How many do you want to?
You know, I'm sort of relishing in the success of my career, the stuff that Catherine and I and my two little Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, you know, we're planning a trip in about 2 weeks to take off for Italy with the dogs to visit a friend in Umbria. And so, you know, I go, that's enough of a challenge to figure that out, especially with my new, you know, I'm now driving a four-wheel computer called a Tesla Y. I was like, oh my gosh, how do you, so managing a trip so you can manage it to the supercharger, the superchargers, you know, for your Tesla, you know, around everything else. Big project.
Yeah, you're going to have to jot down the notes for that. That's
no
excellent.
kidding.
Well, I'll put the links to the book, and you know, I love that your Twitter handle or X handle, the GTD guy. I love that. So I followed you there. I followed you on LinkedIn, and I'll put some links for you. And David, I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done in your career because it's changed my life, and you know, it's been an honor.
Thanks, Chris. I never know what sticks out there for people, so it's always a thrill to hear my stuff actually hit a nerve and you're using it. I mean, I defined the game. I didn't play the game. You're the one who's playing the game. So I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm not trying to motivate everybody. I just look, here's the game. If you want to have a clear head, want to be more focused on what you're doing, here's how you get there. As best I could figure that out. And Perfect. I did a pretty good job. So always thrilling, Chris, to hear people like you talk about that it worked for you. Yay.
I'm going to read it a fifth time now. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with David and I today, and we'll catch you in the next one.